Okay, so this is my 2005 Yamaha R6. So obviously, you're on this video because you want to see if you might want to buy one. Uh, yeah, I'll break it down for you and I'll tell you what I like, what I dislike, and things you should know. So this is a pretty fast bike. It has about 124, 125 horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, 0 to 100 in 6. It can even get to a top speed of anywhere from 155 to 165 miles an hour. Now, stock, this bike weighs about 400 pounds, so it weighs pretty good compared to other 600s. This bike has a pretty tall seat height. It's about 32.7 inches tall, which isn't anything crazy, although it is kind of tall for bikes, but it's really wide, which makes it so you aren't able to reach the ground as easily. I'm about 5'9", and I can just barely flat foot this bike. So if you're any shorter, you're going to have a hard time touching the ground with your feet. Okay, so braking on this bike is extremely important. This bike has dual twin caliper brakes in the front and a single caliper in the back. Now, this bike does have really low clip-ons, as you can see. Your hands are almost level with your butt, but compared to newer generation R6s, its hands are actually kind of high. Most of the R6 handles come just a tad bit lower, but this still is supposedly one of the most track-focused R6s ever made. This bike came out before any emissions laws were really made, so this bike doesn't even have a cat. Technically, the factory has a cat where the muffler is, but everyone removes that, and once you put your own muffler on, it's pretty much a straight pipe, so you have really good airflow with that. Now, even though this bike is almost 20 years old, you can ride with newer bikes and it keeps up just as well. I ride with a 2024 ZX6R and it keeps up and might even be faster than that bike. So you're not going to be left behind by any means. So now let's talk about some little hiccups this bike has. So this bike has a big problem with vibrating the bolts loose. Now, I most often notice this on this bolt here and that bolt there, as well as these two bolts right there, and the bracket that holds the front in down here. They also get loose, as well as the seat. Pretty much every bolt on this bike gets vibrated loose relatively easily. So if you buy this bike, you might want to be sure to check all the bolts probably about weekly. I check it whenever I wash my bike. I tighten everything down. Now, I've heard this problem is fairly common among higher class sport bikes just because they vibrate and do everything better and faster. So that causes it. Although I've never had this problem on any of my other bikes. It's not really a big deal, but it is something to watch out for, or you could lose some bolts. Now, another downside that people might have is its styling. A lot of people don't like the styling on this 2005 R6. It doesn't have the same wasp eyes of the newer ones, and its tail is a little bit bulky. It does have that 90s styling, and a lot of people don't like that. I personally really like that look. I'd honestly take this bike over a newer R6, but that's all personal preference, so you got to keep that in mind. Now, as a 600, this bike does like to be revved out a little bit. Under 6,000 RPMs, this bike really just doesn't handle that great. It kind of just makes some burbling sounds. So under 6,000 RPM, if you're not accelerating, the bike's not going to handle too well. You notice a lot in parking lots and also in slow speed streets. So you're going to want to keep it in a lower gear, like first or second, depending on the speeds you're at. Now that's about it for the downsides. So some upsides of this bike is how well it handles. This bike really handles amazing. You can do any cornering with this, highway runs, anything. This bike will take it and do amazing. This bike also sounds really good. I have a Leo Vince exhaust on there and it sounds absolutely amazing. It's probably one of the loudest bikes I've ever heard. bike can even shoot flames. I'll put a picture up probably now. And yeah, this bike is absolutely amazing. Now these bikes are super cheap. All the R6s now have gone up in price since Yamaha canceled them. But this one didn't. You can get a really good one of these for $5,000. When I bought this one, I bought it for $3,500, and it only had a little bit of damage. The fairings were kind of fucked up, and the exhaust kind of sucked. But I fixed it up, and now this bike, I could resell it for $5,000 if I wanted to. So should you buy this bike? I'd say yes. I've owned this bike for about 2 months, and I absolutely love it. And I think you'll love it too. I hope you liked the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. And you can check out my channel to see any more bike reviews. I don't have a lot up right now, but hopefully more will be coming soon.